Now, requirements for education by people with disabilities. My colleague Ed Grump said it. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was ratified by the Federal German Parliament in 2008, so it's applicable law. And in this UNCRPD, as it is called, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, there are various points that are important in this context, among others, Article 9, accessibility. People with disabilities have the same right to access information and communication, including information and communication technologies. And Article 24, as Gerd Grump said, has the right of education in it. So people with disabilities have a right to digital education programs. They have a right to be involved also in the digital format. We have carried out 4 different projects, which I would like to present to you now. The whole thing started with a demand analysis. I was asked by the cooperative of sheltered workshops in the north of Germany to do a demand analysis. This includes 83 sheltered workshops, and in these workshops, about 40,000 people with disabilities are working. There are 3 such cooperatives in Germany. We have the northern one, the central German one, and the southern German one. And here you see the area of application of the North German cooperative for sheltered workshops. It's basically the north and the northeast of Germany. We have asked all of the institutions involved in the northern associations, and then we deliberately selected 10 institutions. We, that is myself and Dr. Frankenstein and Dr. Hartung-Zielke, who will later on speak to us. She is on parental leave at the moment. So we selected 10 institutions. We had those in cities, those in rural areas, and we have also tried to cater for all of the federal states that GDW North is active in. In a first step, in the next step we did, or in the first phase, we did a secondary analysis, meaning that we took a look at what is available in the institutions, as to whether there is information on the education requirement by people with disabilities, the education need of people who work there, and relatives. And we have tried out as to whether there are specific offers. We asked, are there education offers that support the inclusion of people with disabilities? Are there offers in the institutions? Are there offers in the federal states? And we found out that there is very little there. There are differences depending on the federal states. In the state of Schleswig-Holstein, as Mr. Rink will support, there is the approach of personal planning of the future by Stefan Dose, and there are quite a number of things that have been started. But as I said, it's different depending on the federal state and depending on the different institutions. So then we went to the field and in phase 2 did a primary analysis, which meant we carried out interviews with the experts, the employees and the relatives, and asked them for the educational needs. And we also asked the people with disabilities. We went to 10 institutions and asked about 600 people with disabilities. And the methods that we used were group discussions. And these group discussions were done in a World Cafe format. Maybe some of you have done that already. You discuss on a certain issue, jot down the results, and then you can assess it and evaluate it afterwards. To prepare the whole thing, we have formed monitoring groups or management groups. So the experts, the employees in the institution said, what do we believe, what do people with disabilities want to learn in order to limit it somewhat and to create some initial understanding, so that we developed 4 big topical blocks, and they are quite different. It's a difference as to whether you live in Bremen or in Güstrow. Mobility in Bremen doesn't play a role at all. You simply sit in the tram and go there. In Güstrow, it looks somewhat different. So there are various focus issues in the various institutions, in the various federal states, and this is something which I believe we were able to show quite well in that. So, and then we did this World Cafe. So papers were put on the tables, and people with disabilities got a pen. We selected certain colorful pens. The tables got a certain color, and then they went to that table with that color, discussed on an issue for about 90 minutes. Then there was a break. Then everyone went to the next tables, and then another 90 minutes discussion followed. Things were assessed, things were jotted down either by the people with disabilities or the hosts on the tables, and then afterwards we had a little exhibition to show all of this, and lots of things have been discussed and written down. And we evaluated it, so we went around the tables together with our hosts and experts, and we discussed it. What was being discussed? What does it mean? And then afterwards we did content analyses, and very often we also discussed or evaluated the frequency of statements. So we looked at the results, discussed them, and looked at the frequency of what was mentioned. So if you want to take a closer look at it, I can pass it around here. So I'm passing the brochures around. So this way we were able to capture the demand for education of people with disabilities, and it was actually published in this book by myself, Karin Frankenstein, and Ms. Hartung-Zielke. And now the Springer publishing house said that they would want to translate it by using artificial intelligence into English, and our guest from South Africa said he'd think that's a good idea to do that, so we'll do that, we'll publish it, and then everyone can download it through Springer. But we actually also created a brochure in plain German, in plain language. What people want to know is not so much different from that what other people want. Digital media. Andreas Lord did practice research in South Africa and said money is not an issue in South Africa. If you don't have any money, you don't have to learn how to handle money. Of course, there are other differences, but here it was a big issue. Social competencies was a really big issue. Work and education, leisure time activities, knowledge, independence, and health and nutrition. Those were the issues. So this was the basis for the development of digital education programs. That, Gerd Kramp said it before, we asked people with disabilities, what are you interested in? What do you want to learn? And that provides the basis for the offers, for the programs that were being developed. We established a research lab in cooperation with GDW Nord, the Cooperative of Sheltered Workshop. Ostfalia provided one person of staff, GDW North provided another person. Then we got funding by Erich Siemann Foundation, by Ostfalia Foundation, and Braunschweig Foundation, and then in cooperation with people with disabilities of Lebenshilfe Braunschweig, we developed digital education programs, and students, social work students, went to the Lebenshilfe people, and people with disabilities came to us to the universities. That students go to sheltered workshops, that's normal, that we know, but that people with disabilities come to the university is not not necessarily done, and a number of educational programs and offers were developed, but the lion's share was done by professional filmmakers. Ms. Engelkes has organized it and also developed quite a number of films, and those are the issues here. It's focused on what our education study came out with. So what we developed is being depicted here, and this afternoon Bastian Tidau will present this topic in somewhat greater detail. Now, it's not enough to simply have educational programs rain down like manna from the skies. You actually need people with disabilities to get them on board and to find out about them. And this was the topic of a doctoral thesis of Dr. Hartung-Zielke, and she has found out that there are quite a number of obstacles. Dr. Hartung-Zielke is here online, and she will speak to us and introduce you to the model project. And I don't want to preempt what she's going to say. So that was a third step, the organizational analysis. And then we took a look at the interface between this sheltered workshops and the general labor market. Dr. Schmachtenberg said, what is the target of the federal ministry? Well, it's about integrating people into the general labor market. That's our diBa project, the development and implementation of digital education programs for the qualification of severely disabled people for the general labor market. And that's what's going to be shown after the coffee break. So this is a short information. So first of all, the education needs, and you need to ask people with disabilities what it is exactly that they want to learn. That's the first step. Second step is developing education programs, and we did that in a participatory process. So things were looked at also in test groups, and we changed them. We found out, is it well accepted? Which things are accepted by which group? What does work, what does not work? In the round table later on, we will hear from people who come from sheltered workshops. We'll talk to them in how far this process was successful. And also in the diBa process, we had this participatory approach, and that's what we did our research on. And that's our interface between us and the general labor market, asking which kind of education programs do people with disabilities need in order to be better qualified for the general labor market. We took a look at what about the people working with people with disabilities, the experts, the employees, what do they need to support this process better, and what is relevant for employers. But as I said, this is going to be an issue after the coffee break.